Hi both, it's nice to see you here today to talk about some of the leadership learning that's come out of the Changing Lives projects. And the theme that we're going to talk about today, so I've got Chris and Ross here with me. The theme we're going to focus on is about partnership working. And in particular, how we can learn about building better partnerships and more meaningful partnerships, either with new partner organisations or as in the case of your project, as a partnership relationship changes and evolves. So it's really nice to have you both with us. So the first thing I just wanted to ask you to do was just to tell us briefly about the project that you've been working on together and how that's evolved over time.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. So the International Speaking Club, I should say, is an evolution of a piece of work where we, as ANGUSalive, the Leisure Trust, responded to new Scots, new refugees moving due to the war in Ukraine, all over the country. But here in Angus, we just felt a responsibility to consider what our scope was to give them a quality of life, help them feel like they could be valued members of our local communities, evolve and develop them to become active citizens. So we provided them a space to take part in sport and physical activity, to learn the English language, and we probably ran that as a project for thereabouts 18 months, and we've now handed over to Chris at the Community Trust.
That's right, and I think the trust that changeover was a really good thing because it, as Ross mentioned, it did allow us to become the International Speaking Club and open it up to other new Scots beyond Ukrainians. And also we were able to access more funding streams than were available to ANGUSalive. So we were able to sort of grow. It was all about growth, I think, about taking it to the next level. But it's been a great journey so far, and it's going really well as we speak.
Brilliant. Thank you for that overview. And I know we've talked a lot in detail about some of the lessons that have come out of that partnership, and you shared quite a lot with me about that journey already. Could you just share with people that are listening or watching today what you think are the sort of top 3 areas that people should focus on in terms of building stronger partnership relationships?
Yeah, it's a big question, so I'll attempt to keep this tight. And in terms of, I guess, well, within the context of our project, we recognise that Montrose Community Trust are such a massive asset in their community because they have such deep-rooted connections in the local community, and therefore they truly understand in many ways what the different needs are that people experience and face look like, how to approach them, how to connect with other third sectors and local groups. So that's probably something that came my understanding of how they operated, especially with Chris coming into his role, that probably came through conversations and building a bit of trust and a bit of time together. So, the trust have been around for quite a period of time, and they've always done some great work, but probably in the last 6 to 8 months, I feel there's been some tighter conversations, and really, really, certainly for me in the Leisure Trust, being able to kind of understand better that intentional role they play. It just felt wonderful to be able to have those conversations and to see this project transition to them. Just felt like a seamless opportunity.
Yeah. There's something there about the strengths, recognizing the strengths of your partner and working with those. Brilliant. Thank you. What about other things?
Well, I think what Ross has said there is that I remember our first meeting when we discussed this. I think both of us already knew the outcome of it. We knew what the answer was going to be because those shared values were there, and we were just sort of nodding along, going, "Yeah, this sounds like us. This, we understand the limitations of what you're working within, how we might be able to mitigate those, and sort of take this from strength to strength." Because you could sense as well that it was kind of Ross's baby, and I could sense the love for it, and he just wanted it to go really, really well. And I felt very honoured for him to come to us and say, this seems like something we can pass on to you. And he mentioned trust there. Trust is exceptionally important because I think he was looking and wanting to see someone who had the same feeling towards it. So it shared values and trust alongside each other, which was really wonderful to see. And even when we first started talking, it was so obvious that we were on the same page. and just thinking, yep, this is how we work. That's not to say, you know, that there weren't some thornier conversations about the logistics of things, but because we had that as the bedrock of our relationship, that we were able to obviously navigate those and get around any. Well, they weren't problems, were they, mate? They were more like, you know, things that we could just talk about and overcome as part and
Opportunities.
parcel of, yeah, opportunities. Exactly right. See, we're finishing each other's sentences. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, because I know when I've heard the two of you talk about building that trust, it's obvious it's happened over a number of conversations and over time and as the relationships evolved. And it sounds as if those have been really honest conversations and quite frank conversations as you've gone along. And that seems to have been quite key. So you've talked a bit there about the strengths and the assets, like recognizing what's valuable in your partner. You've talked about those shared values, which I know was a real point of connection, probably for the organizations, but maybe also for you as individuals, it felt like. And you've talked about building trust. The other thing you've talked a little bit about, and I think is especially interesting about this project, is about working to make the most of your differences as well, in terms of what each organization brings in terms of the way it operates, its size, and so on. Could you just share a little bit about that with us as well, please?
Yeah, totally. I suppose from a wider to a more narrow perspective, Chris and the organisation he works with, they are based within the Montrose and the kind of locality setting, whereas from my role and my perspective, I'm working right across the local authority. So there's just no chance that my skill sets lie in those local connections, whereas the trust have that, as I said earlier, in abundance. So immediately we were saying, well, it's really refreshing that we can sit here and have these conversations where we link because we get each other's values, but we also have to be quite honest and go, Chris, I'm not good at that, or that's not where I can contribute. And that's the reason that I felt the project's hit a little bit of a moment in time where this change is good, because it's just not possible for me to commit that. And even simple things like from a staffing perspective, you know, we've supported the trust to take on the two kind of staff members who we introduced to the project. And actually we're learning all the time, aren't we, Chris, that those staff members are really flourishing because Chris's approach to managing them, Chris's ability to introduce and then integrate them within a wider team, which we never had either, is phenomenal. And I think it's paying dividends, because when you look at things like social media, and when you look at things like even attendance and registers that Chris has pulled out previously, you're hearing some great things. So I guess, again, it's through that trust and value that we felt safe and confident enough to strip it back and go, right, where do we not contribute here? Because that's key. Otherwise, we're losing sight of the value of the overall work, which is making sure these people have the right opportunities, not just so we've got a badge against it. And I think that was important, which, yeah, Chris might be able to add to.
Yeah, well, I think the differences that we can celebrate are that if Montrose Community Trust had been tasked with starting the International Speaking Club, it may never have happened, because although we are, as Ross sort of alludes to there, slightly more agile due to the way that we're set up and the autonomy that we have, that would have required quite a lengthy sort of funding application and preparation period, that I think that ANGUSalive were able to almost incubate the speaking club very quickly when the war in Ukraine broke out, because it was just determined to be well within the remit of the council and their organisation as well. So they were able to get it up off the ground and to find the people, etc., and do almost. I feel for Ross a bit, because he did all the legwork, all the hard work, and got it up and running, and was able to keep it safe, and then able to hand it over to me at sort of as if you like, a higher point, where I was able to just apply all of our infrastructure to it, like you mentioned around the staffing, and giving it some very specific love, and attributing members of staff to it, that probably couldn't have happened in the early stages. So it was actually just quite a nice natural progression. But if it hadn't have been for Ross, then I don't think it ever would have happened. So it's really about acknowledging that as well, and taking that into account when our differences pop up, which, you know, could be around how we're going to fund it, how we're going to staff it, etc. But they're all surmountable sort of logistical details. It was really that higher level celebration and agreement that these are the sorts of things that we should both be doing, that was the basis of making sure it all works, and why it continues to work as well, because we still meet and talk about it, and those members of staff are still there, and like Ross says, they're flourishing. I saw them at the game 2 weeks ago. They got to see a 2-2 draw with Dumbarton, so there are other benefits to the programme too.
Brilliant. That sounds really good. Well, thank you so much, both of you, today for coming along and sharing some of this. Yeah, and hope the project continues to go really well.
Thank you, Tara.
Tara, thank you.